what is it exactly you do, Lynn?
Well, I'm basically a researcher, but I've been dealing with occult themes for well over 30 years, and had a bunch of psychic experiences myself. And what I'm really interested in right now, and I've written basically 5 books on the subject, is the whole UFO phenomena and all of its different elements in that which make up the UFO phenomena. For instance, cattle mutilations, crop circles, alien abductions, the hybridization program, which allegedly is going on. And my new book, The Alien Interviews, has about 17 different interviews with people who have actually experienced up close and personal, had their own encounters, and come in one-on-one with me in an interview situation and answer some very difficult questions, but also talk about their experiences and what's happened to them and where they are now. It's a very interesting book, and if I do say so myself, I weigh in on the end of it with about a 30-page treatise. That's probably too strong of a word. A 30-page paper on what I think the phenomenon is and how it links back into what we would call angelos or messengers, more commonly known as angels. There seems to be I'm getting way ahead of myself here, but that's as always. But that's that's kind of what I'm into. But that opens up a whole can of worms in the sense that once you start to probe the so-called extraterrestrial phenomena, it begs the question: what are we really looking at? Is it interdimensional, or is it really extraterrestrial? And for a long period of time, or for a period of time, I believed it was extraterrestrial. I now believe it is interdimensional, the phenomena. In other words, we're looking at so-called spirit beings from another dimension. And I back this up in the new book by equating it to ancient manuscripts where these beings manifested to human beings and what their reactions were, and then comparing it to reactions present day of people who have had encounters, and the similarities are striking.
Wow.
See, that is amazing how you can go from, witnessing the UFO to believing in little green men to all of a sudden, something changed your mind, of course, to think these are interdimensional. These are some kind of spirits now that we're dealing with. Well,
again, there's really only 2 paradigms that you can have, at least that I'm aware of. If they are extraterrestrial, then why haven't they revealed themselves? Why do they do everything clandestinely? Why do they operate from a paradigm of fear, which they operate in constantly? And I've talked to many, well, not many, but several abductees. Let's put it this way: under 10, over 5, of people who have claimed to have been abducted. And what I find a dynamic in their consciousness, in their paradigm, in their worldview, which I find alarming, is they begin to lose the ability to discern right from wrong, good from evil. And so they say, well, these entities are just a higher form than ourselves, and so what is good and evil to us doesn't really apply to them. And yet we see that these entities go out of their way to create a climate of absolute terror and fear during the abduction phenomena. There's just no doubt about it. I mean, every abductee I've talked to talks about the same thing, how they hate it, they loathe it, they're terrified, petrified, and they're powerless to do anything about it. Well, many of them are powerless to do anything about it. There are those who have actually claimed to have stopped their abductions, and one of the guys that I've interviewed who came on the Alien Interviews, and his name is Joe Jordan. He's a MUFON investigator, and been in the field for quite a period of time. And actually, this year's Roswell conference, he had about 10 to 12 people come up on stage and talk about how they were able to stop their abductions, which, of course, is something that most people want to hear at first, and then when they find out the reason how they're able to stop it, oftentimes people just shut down and get up and walk out of the room because they equate what these people are saying with, let's say, experiences they've had which have been negative. And I'll tip my hand to that a little later on in the show.
Now, right. I wanted to ask you a few things about a few different UFO
Please do.
Things that have personally touched my life. One being I've told this story before about the one time I saw something which could be considered a UFO, an unidentified flying object. I was getting out of my car and looked up and looked at the Big Dipper. And there were 2 extra stars in the Big Dipper. And as I'm looking at it, I pointed out to a friend of mine, and I'm saying, this is bizarre. Those shouldn't be there. And as we noticed them, they shot off in two different directions, came back, shot off again in two different directions, came back, zigzagged around each other, and then shot across the night sky in opposite directions faster than anything should have moved. Now, like when they describe UFOs, what kind of experience is that? Is that a close encounter? Is that a sighting? What is that?
Well, that would be a sighting. I mean, you've seen a craft. I've had a close encounter the first time. I've seen a craft, just like you did. I mean, this craft was not lights in the sky. This was broad daylight, and it was a silver disc. I was like 11 or 12 years old at a scout camp taking a shortcut up a ravine with three other boys. The lead guy goes, "Wow, what's that?" The other two guys go, "Yeah, wow, what is that?" I go, "Where?" They go, "There." I look, and there's like the classic silver disc just sitting there, the blue sky. A couple of times the light glints off of the ship, just under the sunlight just kind of glinting off of it, that type of thing. And we're looking at it, wow, what is that? And we saw it for maybe 10 to 15 seconds, maybe 20 seconds at the outside. And all of a sudden the thing shoots up, straight up into the air, like literally in a blink of an eye. You could follow it, but it was gone. It was just like, whoosh, gone. I mean, the speed at which this thing accelerated was, I can't judge that speed. I have no idea what that speed would be because there was no way to discern how far the object was from me. There was no other objects in the sky. I mean, nothing to relate it to. All I know is that literally in a blink of an eye, the thing shot straight up in the air, was gone. And you've had the same type of an encounter where you've seen something which is you can't explain it, and it's outside the norm. It's not planes. It's not satellites.
Right.
It's something else. It's truly an unidentified flying object.
Well, I know it's not satellites because when I go camping, I sit out and watch satellites.
Yeah, the satellites. Yeah, they're geosyncratic orbits, or I mean, you can tell that you're looking at a satellite usually. It's moving in a very straight line.
As quickly, so that's what threw me. But the other experience I had, or I didn't have, but was told to me, and it was told to me in confidence, so I can't give out names or locations.
Okay.
But the people that were involved were driving their car and parked alongside the road and decided to sleep in their car. And it was one of those El Caminos, so all there was a front seat. And they slept each of their backs to a door, and so they were facing each other.
Mm-hmm.
They woke up in the middle of the night to hear scratching at the side of the car, and neither of them could move. They were both frozen still.
Mm-hmm.
They were both panicked, unable to move. The scratching was moving down the car closer to the door, trying to open the door, and they were just staring at each other. The two of them both wide-eyed, looking at each other, when suddenly one of them started just focusing all their attention to their thumb. And eventually, it kind of sounds like the Kill Bill scene where they're like, move your big toe.
Right.
Finally, got her thumb to move, and as soon as her thumb moved, they both snapped, were able to jump up, and the person turned the ignition and the keys, and they took off. And obviously they didn't see anything, but it frightened them so badly that they wondered if it might have been something alien trying to get into the vehicle. So,
well, I mean, it's hard to weigh in on that and not having all the facts and not really being there. There was an encounter of something. I have found that when people encounter these so-called aliens or grays or whatever, that oftentimes paralysis will happen where they're not able to move. They can move their eyes around, but they're not able to move. There's a power that comes over them, and these entities will communicate with them telepathically, which is it's a whole different paradigm than what you and I are used to. I've experienced some of this when I was involved in several exorcisms. It's very similar when you deal with a demonic entity. They come at you. When the thing comes at you, when it's in someone and it comes at you, it focuses its energies on you. The thoughts that come into your head, you realize aren't your own. They're just not your own. It's very similar to The Exorcist 2, where you're sitting there and the thing comes at you in images and thoughts, and what it does is it fogs your brain. It's very, very difficult to think because it's operating, and this is the whole crux of the book, Alien Interviews. It's operating in a paradigm which is normal to it. That's how it functions, okay? In other words, its inherent abilities are just how it's made, how it functions. And the same way we function with our five senses, it has those senses and more, some of which we know nothing about. It speaks of different power and a different dynamics that are inherent to those beings that we can only guess at. And one of those things is it's able to project that type of confusion, a type of a power over someone's mind. And I've witnessed this with, fairly recently, like last year, there was a woman who I believe was, I would say, demon possessed. Okay, and some of us went and tried to remove this thing. Well, rule number one: unless she wants it out, you can't cast it out. You can't take it out. She has to want the thing out. That's rule number one. Rule number two: something like this, unless people know what they're dealing with, they can get in a lot of trouble. And I backed off the thing, but not before the woman that was with me. I watched her all of a sudden she was befuddled, and she kind of looked at me like, why am I befuddled? And she was befuddled because that entity threw at her a force. I don't know how it operates, okay, but it threw something at her which clouded her mind. She was no longer able to speak. She was having a difficult time in speaking. And that's what it does. And that's, and when you go back and you look at ancient manuscripts, this is all par for the course. This is how these fallen angels or, the good guys, whenever they appear, it's the same type of power which comes over people. The good guys will come over and touch you and tell you to, okay, stand up, you're okay. Peace be with you, that type of thing. The bad guys thrive on the fear and will let you just wallow in it, which is what it so parallels, in my opinion, the whole alien abduction phenomena. There's so many similarities there. What are we really looking at? And in my opinion, we're looking at they're not extraterrestrial, they're interdimensional, i.e. fallen angels. And when you talk about that, people, again, when was the last time we saw them? Well, we haven't seen them. All we can do is talk to, let's say, abductees, or go back into ancient manuscripts and look at some of the encounters that people come up with when these things happen. And they're, with the good guys, good things happen. With the bad guys, it's nasty. Apparently there was some sort of a confrontation. There was some sort of a war between these beings. Sides were drawn up, and we're kind of like, we're almost like cannon fodder in a way. There's this unseen war which is happening in another dimension all around us that we don't see because we're dull to it. And yet I believe that there are principalities and rulers in very, very dark places. One of them, if I can digress for a bit,
now,
you can look
Lynn,
at Iraq.
Real quick, Lynn, are we talking about the war between good and evil, heaven and hell?
Well, yeah, I mean, you can put it in those terms, and that helps most people come to grips with it. But this thing's been going on for thousands of years, and many of these ancient prophecies, I believe, which talk about, for instance, most people are aware of what Armageddon is, but when you look at the chaos that comes in the wake of Armageddon, it's some really bizarre stuff coming down. I mean, like really, really bizarre stuff coming down, which begs the question, are we looking at the time on the planet where some of these things may begin to manifest? And in my opinion, the UFO phenomena, guys, this is the bottom line. And I was asked this. I was at a radio station on Thursday, and the guy kind of looked at me and kind of scoffed and said, do you really believe in this stuff? And I said, listen, pal, here's the deal. That 30 years ago, there were 1 or 2 sightings per year. Now there's over 300 to 400, sometimes even 600, like in August, sightings per month. The phenomena is not going away. Thousands and thousands and thousands of people have seen the phenomena. It's burgeoning. Now, if it wasn't this we were looking at, I'd be writing about whatever phenomena, was burgeoning, was manifesting. And this is the one deal that just will not stop. I mean, cattle mutilations are steady. Crop circles are there. Granted, there's hoaxers. I admit that. They're the alien abductions, and for instance, I interviewed Dr. Roger Lear, who we talked about a little bit earlier. The guy's a podiatrist, but he's actually taken out, surgical removed over 12 of these implants. I handled one. They've had the metal analyzed, and it's some sort of an alloy which they know nothing about. It shouldn't exist, and yet it does. He watches when he tries to go take. He talked to me about one where he moved his finger just above the person's skin, and the implant would move away from his finger, like an inch, a half an inch at a time. So as he's moving his finger, the implant would move away. When he goes in and he tries to cut these things out, sometimes the blood vessels and the nerve endings are wrapped around it. Instead of trying to move it out of the body like a BB or most implants would of a person, the body moves these things out. The body actually integrates with these implants. So something is going on, and we can all some of us choose to keep our heads in the sand and really not look at the phenomena. But when you look at the ongoing flap in Stevensville, Texas, in certain areas, the flaps in Illinois, and my hat's off to the History Channel because they do, I think, a fabulous job. And I've had one of the reporters from the Stevensville local newspaper comes on the record and talks about she hasn't seen the lights, but just what it's caused in the town and where people are at, and how some people are fearful, other people don't want to talk about it, other people are trying to find out what it is, other people have come forward. And I talked one-on-one with Ricky Sorrell, who, saw this up close and personal. That's a close encounter of the third kind. I mean, the craft was like right over his head, literally over his head. He estimated it to be over 1.5 miles wide. Couldn't see the edges of the thing, guys.
Wow.
And when you see the thing is like his operative word was overwhelming. When you see something like this, it's absolutely overwhelming. And that's my whole point. When one of these puppies shows up over L.A. or let's say 50 of them show up in different capitals of the earth, I mean, it's gonna cause a mega shift.
I saw that
movie.
Thinking. I saw that movie.
There you go. There you go. I did too.
Well, I tell you what, Lynn, that I've never heard it actually put this way, where the UFOs, the little green men, whatever, interdimensionals, actually fallen angels, possibly. That goes back to biblical terms, and when it talks the biblical stories about when Lucifer was cast from heaven, and he was sent to Hades or hell or whatever you want to call it.
Right.
Now, I'm not clear on my Bible. I haven't read it in quite some time, but wasn't he told he had to stay there in a different place other than he couldn't visit Earth or anything like that? He had to.
No, not at all. In fact, there's one prophecy which talks about that there's a war in heaven, and Satan or Lucifer is actually cast down to earth. And the following verse says, "Woe to the inhabitants of earth, because the devil has fallen, is now come among you, and he knows his time is short." See, the problem is, and here where I'm coming from, and I apologize to your listeners who have been in certain churches that have obfuscated the supernatural aspect of these ancient texts. This, you talked about the Bible. That book is the most supernatural book you'll ever want to encounter. And if you were to take the supernatural occurrences out of that book, you'd lose about 2/3 of it right off the bat. I mean, and in my opinion, it is a manual. Hear what I'm saying, guys? It's a manual of how to operate in the supernatural. And all that has been, and I'm broad brushing here, but much of it has been lost through the centuries, through the churches, through ritual and dogma and traditions. But the whole book is a guidebook to how to operate in the supernatural. That's what it's about, literally.
Right. Now, hey, Lynn, I wanted to address UFO cults. You spent some time working with them. What exactly are they?
What are we talking like Hail Bob here, or what's going on?
Can you repeat that? You broke up. I'm sorry.
The UFO cults. I know you've
okay.
done some work with them. I was just curious as to what they do. I know like satanic cults, stuff like that, what they do, but UFO, how do they do it?
Well, I mean, look, a cult is a group of people who operate in, try to operate in secret and look at, and that term is bandied around quite loosely. And frankly, the person who wrote that, it's a bit of a misnomer.
Okay.
I've studied people, UFO groups, and there are many different cults. Let's say, for instance, there was one in California not too long ago with the whole Haley-Bopp thing, right? The whole comet thing, and it was the two. And I've been following that guy for a number of years, Bo and Peep and all their nonsense. And that would be a classic example of a UFO cult where, these two guys are the leaders. and they're believing that they're somehow going to be transcended into a mothership into a different dimension or whatever, and they all committed suicide. I mean, that's not only, which is that's certainly bizarre, but if it was even more bizarre, is all the men got castrated, willingly got themselves castrated.
Yeah,
years before.
Even having
so
seen,
this is a cult, guys. This is not good at all.
Even having seen some of these movies where they have some really good-looking alien women,
right?
I'm not castrating myself for them. It's not happening. I just ain't gonna do it.
Well, there's Dr. Jacobs, who, by the way, I've interviewed in the alien interviews. I got to tell your audience, man, it's $6. It's an interactive ebook. Give it a little plug here. It's an interactive ebook. You go online, Spiral of Life, www.spiral, like a spiral staircase, Spiral of Life, and you can download it. It costs $6. It gives you another landing site and like a secret password. You go in there, you download the thing. It's got links to all sorts of different sites. It's very interactive. It's over 140 pages, 17 interviews, and it's just packed and packed and packed with stuff. One of the guys I interviewed, Dr. Jacobs, for the book, he's been involved in the alien abduction phenomena for just about 30 years now. In fact, he wrote his doctorate on different aspects of that. And he believes that the hybridization program, which is he has a different worldview than I do. He and I don't agree of what's behind this, but we do agree that it's going on. We both agree that the phenomenon is happening, and that's why I include him in the book, because I'm not gonna, I'm looking for people that will come forward and admit that the phenomena is burgeoning, it's happening, it's in real time, it's not going away. We need to start discussing what this thing is. He does believe, like I believe, that this is very malevolent, it's evil, that the breeding program, the hybridization program is pretty much complete, and that they have actually literally integrated into our society so-called alien human hybrids. Now that is bizarre. If it's true, if it's true, it's very, very bizarre. And, look, I haven't encountered anything like that, not even remotely. But, Jacobs believes that it's already happened. Other contactees believe it's already happened. Other abductees believe it's already happened. When you look at Steven Spielberg's movie Taken, granted, it's sci-fi, right? It's the most expensive miniseries ever produced for television a number of years ago. It was only aired on the Sci-Fi. 20 hours long, guys. That's how long this television series is, right? 20 hours long, and it's called Taken. And it basically deals with the breeding program and what is happening. Of course, the last 3 episodes, Spielberg goes off on a right turn, or left turn, I should say. We completely disagree. He believes that these are, in fact, aliens, and that they're creating something which is, the hybrid that they're creating is for our good. I'm sitting there screaming at the television set, believing that the hybrid that they're creating is not for our good. It's very malevolent, pernicious even. And that Dr. Jacobs basically takes that same take as I do. He doesn't believe that they have our best interest. Now, he doesn't believe that they're fallen angels like I do. That's where we differ. So with all due respect to Dr. Jacobs, we differ on this one dynamic. I think it's a very important dynamic. And this, of course, mirrors, when you go back and you read the Book of Enoch, which, by the way, is found on the Dead Sea Scrolls, it amplifies the mischief that the fallen angels got into in and around the time of Genesis 6, which is why it was a global flood, because the Nephilim were on the earth, and these guys were all over the earth. And some of these skeletons that have been unearthed, specifically in Turkey, were over 30 feet tall. So these weren't, like we think of David and Goliath, which is the second or maybe third incursion of the fallen angels messing around with the women of Earth.
Now, I've never heard of these 30-foot tall skeletons. Where were they found?
2 of them were found in Turkey.
Really?
Yep.
That blows my mind.
If you after the show, go Google Steve Quayle. Go on his website and check it out. He's done extensive research into the whole giants and the giant skeletons. Look, in the Americas, as we pushed west in Ohio and different places, they found mounds, and they would do primitive archaeological digs. And this is documented. I'm not making this stuff up. They found skeletons, oftentimes, that reached over 9 feet in length, with 6 fingers, 6 toes, and red hair. That's not an American Indian.
Huh.
Oh, no. It's a very big one if it is. But, Lynn, I wanted to get back to the Roswell crash.
Sure.
Now, you've done some work with that. You've studied it. you've researched it, what exactly, because some people believe we still have the bodies, blah, 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 in Area 51.
Mm-hmm.
Is that a possibility? If these are supernatural beings, fallen angels, I mean, is that possible that the government has the bodies of angels stored somewhere?
I just switched phones. This seems to be better. This is a landline. I can hear you guys better.
Oh,
okay.
much better.
It took me a while to come up with a solution for that. Because first of all, you say to yourself, why would let's say anyone deliberately crash saucers in Roswell, New Mexico, and then allow the bodies to be retrieved? What are these bodies, in fact? And it took me a long time to figure this out. And this is a theory, okay? There's a difference between the grays, the little guys, right, that we see that have now been enculturated with the big black slanted eyes that are about 4 feet tall, all right? Those, let's just call them the grays because pretty much everyone knows them as grays. But there's another creature which people and abductees talk about that they see on board the ships, and these are tall beings, and they assume different forms. Sometimes they can appear as reptilian, other times they can appear as insectoid, other times they can appear as Nordic. In other words, in my opinion, they're shapeshifters. Now, why would I say that? What backs it up? There's a scripture, once again, from our spiritual handbook, which says that basically fallen angels can appear as angels of light if they so choose. Okay. They can appear as angels of light if they so choose. That's a shapeshifter. Now, it doesn't tell me that it can, appear as a wolf or this or that. But what it does say is it can appear. It seems to appear, and I'm taking a little bit of liberty here, perhaps, but it shapeshifts. It can appear as whatever it wants to appear. Insectoid, reptilian. Who knows what the thing really looks like? In my opinion, it's probably a reptilian. That's why we get into the plumed serpent, Quetzalcoatl, and all that. In my opinion, we're looking at fallen angels manifesting on the earth. Here's the deal. We know that the spirits of the Nephilim, and this might, let me back up just a little bit. The Genesis flood, which I believe happened because all cultures throughout the globe talk about some sort of a flood story. The Chinese have it. The Chumash Indians here in California have a flood story. Many cultures throughout the planet have a flood story. It might differ in its particulars. Instead of Noah and 8 people, it'll have 4 people, but it's basically the same story. There's a boat, there's a bunch of animals, there's a bunch of people, there's a flood, and people are saved. Oftentimes it talks about a race of giants which are here, which is why the flood happens. But I digressed needlessly. So this flood happened, and these Nephilim were on the earth for maybe 400 years, perhaps longer. The Nephilim are the byproduct of the offspring. Here we go back into the breeding program again. This brings us up to present day. But the Nephilim, thousands and thousands of years ago, were the offspring of fallen angels and the women of earth. All right, you can get that from different sources in antiquity. One, the book of Genesis, but also the book of Enoch, which gets into it. Josephus, the first-century Jewish historian, also talks about the Nephilim in depth. And apparently, according to Josephus, the bones of those skeletons, some of which may have been 12 to 15 feet tall, were openly on display in Jerusalem before the Romans came and destroyed the temple and the city of Jerusalem in AD 70.
Now, Lynn, I just have a quick question.
Go ahead.
My memory of the Bible, where it speaks of it, is it Genesis or is it Leviticus where it speaks of the Nephilim?
Genesis 6.
It is Genesis 6. Okay, so doesn't it speak of how the sons of God, why are the sons of God lying with the daughters of man? So if they're the sons of God, wouldn't they be angels? Are they definitely fallen angels?
Well, it uses the sons of God is the Hebrew term B'nai Ha-Elohim, okay?
Okay.
And what that says, it always differentiates. Well, B'nai Elohim is always translated angels or messengers in the Hebrew. It doesn't differentiate the good or the bad, but it's used just as angels or messengers, okay? B'nai Elohim, sons of God, that's what they are, which we attribute to the angels. And it doesn't differentiate the text between the good or bad, but obviously these are the bad guys. When you start to piece the whole puzzle together, you realize that these were fallen. They came and they did the unthinkable. They had sex with the women, which created the Nephilim, which eventually resulted in the flood. Getting back to the Nephilim, you've got these disembodied spirits of the Nephilim, which then become demons. Now follow me. Demons must inhabit something to manifest in this dimension. There's a difference between a fallen angel. Fallen angels can pop in. granted, most of the time they don't, and they're forbidden from doing so because of some angelic warfare which we know nothing about. But apparently rages continually. But we get glimpses of it. Mothman, in my opinion, might have been a fallen angel manifesting in an area. All right? But fallen angels can and do appear. Demons can't do that. They just can't show up on the spot. They have to inhabit something. And there's text after text after text which talk about how demons inhabit a host. And so here's the deal. Lucifer, or Satan, is a super scientist. He's not some idiot in a red suit. He's a being that if you and I met up with him, we'd be flat on our faces as if dead, literally. Just meeting with him because of the power would just completely overwhelm us. Trust me, it would. Demons don't have that kind of power, and they have to manifest in something. So what if, and this is a lot of what ifs, we, human beings, now know the genome, all right? We know how the genome works. We can take the genetics of a firefly and put them into a frog and have a frog that lights up in the dark. I've talked to a guy at Amgen, not making that up. That's what they can do. That's the stuff that he knows about. What about stuff that we don't know about yet? So my point is this. What if the Greys are nothing more than some sort of a biological suit that enables the demons, let's say, to interface in this dimension? That's what I think the Greys are. That's why they're expendable. And this also, interestingly enough, what really got me excited about this theory was when I read Whitley Strieber's book, Communion. And he talked about being aboard a ship and opening up a drawer, some type of a drawer, and seeing in it a bunch of Greys. But they were like suits almost. They weren't like, they weren't real. They weren't animated yet. And so that got me thinking, I wonder if there's some sort of like a biological clone or some sort of a body, if you will, that these demons, disembodied spirits of the Nephilim, can interface, inhabit, and then, of course, move about in this three-dimensional time-space continuum. It's a stretch, guys, but it's a workable theory, and other people that share my paradigm have considered it and kind of, gotten on board with it. But again, we don't know. But that would explain why you can crash a saucer.
Let's take a quick break, Lynn. We'll be right back in about 2 minutes. Lynn, can you hold on? We'll be right back.
Love to, sure, guys.
Okay, we'll be right back, folks. Stick around.
Stay tuned.
Hunters International, and you're listening to Ghost Man and the Demon Hunter Show.
And we're back, and we're here with Sean. You still there?
Yeah, coming in real light, though. You're coming in real light. But we are back in studio live, and we have Lynn. Let me try to say the last name one more time, Lynn. L.A.
Marzulli.
Marzulli. Before I said Manzulli. Marzulli, guys, and he is the author of Politics, Prophecy, and the Supernatural, and many more books that we're going to find out more about. And we're talking about UFOs and, well, I guess the possibility of UFOs being angels, fallen angels.
Mm-hmm.
That's what we've been talking about. And I know you've worked with so many things. We've covered the lights, the Phoenix lights. What about the story that we talked before the show about the pilot chasing the UFOs? Remember we had discussed a story.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Did you work with that gentleman, or?
Well, we can talk about. Are you speaking specifically about George Filer, that particular pilot, or are you talking about? Yeah, George Filer is just one. Major George Filer has a report that he files weekly called Filer's Files. Nice little pun on words there.
Okay.
His last name, playing his last name there. But he's been involved in this ever since he saw one and chased one. Literally chased a UFO when he was in England. Interestingly enough, about a month and a half ago, 2 months ago, the UK released so-called declassified a bunch of documents specifically in regard to UFO sightings that happened in the UK in the 60s and the 70s. And one of the most astounding reports was that this a fighter pilot, American fighter pilot, in an F-14 flew a sortie against a UFO, which he described, and they haven't come on the record. The guy's like in his 60s now, okay?
Uh-huh.
He comes on the record, And at the same time that they're releasing these classified information, they declassify them. And he says, I'm the pilot. I flew the plane. I was in an F-14. I was about to fire all 24 weapons at this thing, which, by the way, was as big as an aircraft carrier or bigger than an aircraft carrier, when the thing took off from me at a speed which he estimates upwards of 10,000 miles an hour. It was gone in an instant. Now, that's the kind of stuff. Look, I'm not making that up. That's the UK releasing classified documents. And there's like a malaise on the public. We're so punch drunk with all this nonsense that we're hyped up on the media. The news cycle now in the United States is less than 12 hours. So what you see now in the news, pretty much, unless the story's got legs and it holds, it's gone in 12 hours, and it's hard. Same thing with this story with the UK. You'd figure that this would make, just international news. Here's a UK, United Kingdom releasing, classified documents. Here's the pilot who saw the thing. Their government is saying, we saw a UFO that was larger than an aircraft carrier. Here's the pilot. Does anyone care? Not really. Not really. Same thing with Edgar Mitchell this year on Kerrang Radio, when he talked about the Roswell crash as a real event that had happened, that extraterrestrial bodies were retrieved. The government knows about this. There's been a cover-up. Same thing with the Stevensville Lights, when Larry King, in the beginning of the year, I think it was in February, had George Norrie, and who else was on that show? Dr. Jesse Marcel from Roswell. Stanton Friedman was on, a couple of skeptics, and then they had the crew of people that saw the Stevensville Lights. They also had Fife Symington, and Fife Symington was the governor of Phoenix, or Arizona, I should say, at the time of the Phoenix Lights in '97. Well, good old Fife Symington, who held a press conference in '97 and laughed it up, and and made a real farce of the whole thing, and had one of his aides dressed up as an alien and come in for a press conference so everyone could laugh at it, right?
Right.
Ridicule. On the Larry King live show 10 years later, good old Fife Symington, and my hat is off to the man for his courage and forthrightness in correcting the record. He apologizes to his former constituents, saying that, I was there in Phoenix. I saw the ship, and it was not of this world. National television. Do people care? You start connecting these dots. That's the whole point of my book, the new book, The Alien Interviews, because you examine what it's really for is a person who's going, what is all this UFO stuff? Pick up the book. It's $6. It's interactive right on your computer. You can hop to websites. You make up your own mind. But the research is there. The interviews are there with people from all across the board. And you know what? Either all these people are absolutely stark raving lunatics, or we're looking at a phenomenon. And that's why there's like over 6 people who have MDs. I mean, it's not some farmer out in the field. Dr. Lynn Katai, Dr. Jesse Marcel, Dr. Roger Lear, Major George Filer. I mean, they're all really, and then I've got some witnesses like Lynn Dickey, who's just a person who was an alien contactee and was that way for years and actually communicated with these so-called entities and beings and realized very recently, actually, that they were malevolent and just fled, just was terrified when she realized what she was dealing with. And, there's other people like that weigh in too. But that's the whole purpose of the book, to try to wake up the perception, wake up the common man on the street that, guys, something's going on right under our noses. It's not going away. We need to have a dialogue. We need to discuss this stuff. What is this really going to happen? And in the book that I wrote previously, that has Politics, Prophecy, and Supernatural, the subtitle is called Becoming Great Deception and the Luciferian Endgame. And in that book, I lay out very clearly what I believe the endgame is. And it's very similar to the ending of the Indiana Jones Crystal Skull movie. When that huge mothership, when you see something like that, it's overwhelming. It will change your worldview. And is that the coming great deception that ancient manuscripts warn us of? Here's a prophecy from 2,000 years ago, that what is coming on the earth will be so bizarre that even the elect would be deceived if that were possible. So what is coming, guys, is literally, in the words to quote Ricky Sorrell, one of the Stevensville UFO witnesses, overwhelming. When you see it, it's overwhelming. You're going to have to fight your brain because you're going to want to believe the lie. You're going to want to believe it.
Speaking of lies, I've been reading some of your stuff on the unholy deception.
Sure.
and that's the surfacing of Lucifer, and the different aspects the church is having in this whole alien aspect, the big secret of what's going on. What do you think the church knows what's going on here?
Well, I mean, look, the Vatican might, I guess it was in June or July when Funes came out, a spokesman for the Vatican, saying that the extraterrestrial, when and if the extraterrestrial reveals himself, he should be regarded as our brother. That was kind of interesting. So, it just kind of blew me away. The Protestant churches in the United States, for the most part, don't discuss it. There's several of us who discuss this stuff constantly. We do lots of radio. We've written books. Tom Horn, Chuck Missler, Joe Jordan, myself, Patty Heron, Mike Heiser. Guys like this, David Flynn, who are desperately trying to sound up an alarm and a warning. I mean, I do a lot of radio shows pretty much every week, and it's not all I do, but I spend a lot of time on the radio talking about this, trying to shake people's awareness to look at the evidence, look at what's here. It's not, George Noory is a fantastic show, and Coast to Coast has done a wonderful job in trying to get the information out and having people like myself and other people with different, like I said earlier, Dr. Jacobs has a different worldview than I do, but the bottom line, Coast to Coast will have him come on, and, he can begin to educate people as to what is going on, what his research has discovered, and then people can make up their own minds to what is happening. But, I believe, and as I write exclusively about this in Politics, Prophecy, and the Supernatural, that I believe that will be a revealing, and that revealing will follow on the heels of a war in the Middle East, which is also very prophetic. I believe that the war in the Middle East, the coming war in the Middle East, which is coming, guys. I mean, you gotta be blind not to see it. And that will be a confederacy of nations which will come up against the land of unwalled villages, i.e. Israel. This prophecy was written 2,500 years ago by the prophet Ezekiel. It names the nations that will attack Israel specifically. The first one is Russia. The second one is Iran. Mm-hmm. Don't believe
now,
me,
Lynn,
go look at it.
Lynn, I got to ask you. I'm dying to ask you. Ghost, earthbound spirits.
Sure.
Okay, we're going to get on that. Where do they rank with you? I mean, we have fallen angels, aliens, whatever. What is there a link between them and the earthbound spirits that we run into, say, as ghost researchers, stuff like that?
Yeah, look, the whole thing with the ghost research, and this is why you guys got to be careful in what you're doing. Mm-hmm. In my opinion, you're dealing with demons. Demons thrive on blood. They thrive on fear and on blood. Those are the two things. Whenever there's like a murder, that's a doorway. That's a doorway. And so it's a question of what are you really contacting? Do you think, and they can masquerade as anything. So they can oftentimes masquerade as the victim, but really aren't they just in some ways reenacting the same thing over and over again? That's how they feed on it. They're like psychic vampires. They feed on fear and terror. That's their food, literally. That's the currency of the Luciferians is fear, and that's what they move in. And so, in my opinion, what people need to do is attack it from a spiritual vantage point. And look, all the scientific gadgets would show increases in heat or cold spots and all that. Those are manifestations which we're seeing physically. Again, I talked about this earlier. Demons must inhabit something in order to manifest physically. Does that mean that they can move in some paranormal way with move objects around? Of course they can. With a lot of, it takes a lot of strength for them to do that, to begin to move objects or stuff like that. But all that, they can do that. But for them to really manifest, really inhabit this dimension and move in this dimension and interface with us, they need to inhabit something. And see, that's the danger. When you get these people that go out and look for these things, you really need to protect yourself because you can open yourself up to something that you don't want.
Well, that's one of the arguments Sean and I have all the time. We love fighting about the Ouija board because I honestly think the Ouija board is a piece of wood. It's not a dangerous thing, but when people use it, they allow themselves to be opened up to things that they're not ready for.
Yeah, the Ouija board is an occult tool, and it makes you wonder why is it still being made. Who's behind this thing? And look, my encounters with it, and this was many years ago. We had the 3 or 4 of us. We were in my friend Cliff Eberhardt's bedroom, and I was probably about 16, 17, and we watched a black hole open in the wall right next to us. I mean, we all just absolutely fled the room. We were just terrified. We contacted something, and the one guy who was with us was actually into demonology at the time, and he spoke the word Ashtaroth. Now, I've studied this since then. I was 16. I wasn't into this at all. But, I know who Ashtaroth was, or, and worship literally as one of the Babylonian gods. In fact, they would sacrifice the children, the babies, and they would heat up this huge bronze statue and place the live baby, infant, in the arms of this heated statue and sacrifice it. That's who Ashtaroth was. And so we were evoking this demon, and things started to happen. So yeah, the Ouija board to me is not something to play with. Avoid it at all costs.
Now, do you believe in God, like Christ and God, Lynn? I mean, can you answer that?
Do I believe in Yeshua HaMashiach, Jesus the Messiah?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, absolutely. But
okay, now I was wanting to ask you, what do you think these beings are? Do you think they're well, I know we was talking about the aliens being sort of fallen angels. What classification would God be? I mean, is he like a different dimensional being, or?
Well, here's the deal. When you look at what Jesus did, and I actually wrote about this in the back of the alien interviews. It's kind of what there's 2 things I base it on. One thing is I base it on the accounts, the biblical accounts, the stories. And here's what people have to realize: see, when you hear these stories from cradle to grave, they lose any meaning. And you're in a church setting with stained glass windows, and some guy's up there droning on and on. You can't move in this pew, and you're all dressed up in a scratchy suit or whatever. And it's like, what are you guys doing here? What is all this? It's craziness. But what they're talking about is amazing. What they're talking about is absolutely supernatural through the nines. Here's just one example. Just one example. Leprosy in the ancient world was a death sentence. If you were a leper and you had leprosy, there were certain things that you had to do by law. First of all, you couldn't get near other people, and you had to shout unclean, unclean wherever you went. So people know that you had leprosy, and they would avoid you literally like the plague. The story goes, Yeshua, and that's his Hebrew name, Yeshua, okay? That's his Hebrew name. Jesus is the Greek. And Christ is Christos, which means the anointed one, or Mashiach. So Yeshua HaMashiach, Jesus the Christ, the Messiah. See, all this stuff gets lost over 2,000 years, and it becomes, no one knows what it is. Jesus the Christ. Well, what is that? And most people don't know. Christos, anointed. Yeshua HaMashiach, Jesus the Messiah. That's how it's translated. So Yeshua sees these lepers, and they cry out to him, and he heals them. He heals the 10 lepers, and he heals them instantly, which begs the question, what's this guy operating with? How is he able to somehow change the molecular structure of each of those men at a subatomic level in a way that things line up, and instantaneously their skin and their body parts are made whole again? Oftentimes the fingers would just rot away, the ears, the nose, like the outer extremities of the body would just rot away from leprosy. Just a disgusting disease. So you'd see people with bandages on their face because they had no lips or nose or ears and things like that. They were horrible, horrified specimens of humanity. And yet he's able to restore these 10 lepers. What the heck are we looking at? How can anyone argue that that's not a benevolent act, that that's not an astounding, miraculous act? Now, here's the deal, guys. To us, it's miraculous, absolutely. To him, he's operating from a paradigm which is inherent to his being. That's normal for him. It's normal for him. When angels appear, for instance, here's a story. Peter, one of the disciples, is in prison. He's chained to a wall. There's Roman guards all around him. All of a sudden, this angel appears. A messenger appears to him, right? Supernatural entity. He's not sure whether he's dreaming or he's awake. What did I say earlier? It fuddles your mind when we have encounters with these beings. It's hard for us to think straight. So Peter, in the account, is mimicking that. He's having a lot of trouble thinking straight. He's not sure whether he's asleep or awake. And so you got a real problem if you can't, differentiate between the two. The angel doesn't touch him. All of a sudden, Peter realizes that the chains have fallen off of him, his ankles and his wrists. He gets up, and the angel says, "Follow me quickly." All the guards are suddenly asleep. What the heck's going on? The door cell opens. The lock just springs. The door cell opens. They walk out of the prison to the prison gate. The gate opens by itself. No one touches it. And Peter and the angel walk a little further, and this messenger then just leaves him, just disappears somehow back into this dimension from where he came from. And we see this over and over and over again. Now, guys, that is major supernatural stuff. You see what I mean? That is, if I just came on and said, "Hey, a friend of mine is in prison, and listen to what happened," we'd be going, "Wow, what's the guy's name? Gotta talk to this guy." Well, this is what I'm saying. This is the point I'm trying to make. That book is a supernatural guidebook for us, and it's there. It's there for us to look at and learn how to deal in the supernatural and how to walk in it. And that's, in my opinion, that's what it's about. So, Yeshua HaMashiach, Jesus the Messiah, walked in this stuff continually. Let me just give you one more example here, and this is just incredible. He's preaching to people, he's talking to people, and remember, there's no pulpit, there's no microphone, there's no television, televangelist thing. He's on a hillside just talking to a bunch of people, and it's late in the day, and people are hungry. And his followers come up to him and go, "Hey, we got to feed these people." You guys have heard the story before, but see, we've heard it so many times it loses its meaning. It becomes, who cares? The bottom line is this: there's 5,000 people, but in reality, more like 15,000 people when you include women and children. They've got a couple of fish, a couple of pieces of bread. Now, it's hopeless. At that moment in time, it's absolutely hopeless. What is he going to do? Hey, Rock, watch him pull a rabbit out of my hat. Somehow, he manifests enough food. He's operating in paradigms that we know nothing about from another kingdom which he came from. And he feeds 15,000 people, and there's stuff left over. What are we looking at? How much more supernatural do we want to get?
Now, Lynn,
I mean, that's just unbelievable.
Lynn, I've got a couple questions I just want to hit really fast from the chat room before we have to end for the night.
Sure.
People, we were talking earlier about the big war in the Middle East.
Correct.
The angels are, the aliens are very possibly fallen angels using these bodies as a way to get around. It's all coming up to a big thing that's going to happen. Is this something we're expecting to happen soon? When can we expect this war? When can we expect these things?
Well, look, I'm not a date setter. Yeah. I mean, I'm not a date setter. I never will be. I will say this, that I follow news in the Middle East from a variety of news sources, including the Iranian daily paper, which I read about 2 or 3 times a week, or at least scan it. And things are heating up. For instance, the Russians just sold the Iranians the S-300 anti-missile defense system, which means now that the Iranians can shoot down Israeli warplanes that may do some sort of a sortie over Iran to knock out their nascent nuclear program. Hamas, which is in the Gaza Strip, fires weekly missiles into Israel, and Israel isn't doing anything about it, at least at this point. The situation is untenable. It can't continue like this forever. Hezbollah in the north is entrenched in northern Lebanon with over 100,000 rockets pointed at Israel. Syria has 10,000 troops surrounding the Lebanese border, plus their tanks. The Russians are all over the place. They're selling arms to the Syrians. They're selling arms to the Iranians. Libya, I mean, it is all over the place. These are the nations that are mentioned specifically in that prophecy. So my opinion is that war is coming into that area, and I believe that we will see a nuclear exchange, which is what the prophecy says, not what I say. We will see a nuclear exchange, and this will cause the greatest amount of fear that this planet has ever witnessed. The greatest level of fear. The greatest level of fear. And that's when we'll see the UFO manifest, in my opinion. That's my theory.
And here's the last question I wanted to ask for you. It was kind of thrown out there in the chat room. I want to throw it out too. We talked to a lot of people dealing with Bigfoot, stuff like that. We've actually talked to Stanton about the possibility that Bigfoot might be the aliens repopulating a species that was wiped out. Is this, in your opinion, another alien hybrid?
Hard to say what it is. Bigfoot's been around for, the Indians have legends of Sasquatch and all that, which is, it's hard to say what we're looking at there.
Could this be a Nephilim gone bad?
Is it just another ape? Who knows? Is it a skunk ape? Is it is it some sort of a primate which we haven't discovered yet, or is it in fact some sort of a Nephilim? I don't know.
Now, your website is Spiral of Life?
Correct. www.spiral, like a spiral staircase, Spiral of Life. All the books are up there, but that's a landing page. You can get to the site from there, but that's a landing page specifically for the alien interviews. There's some really, really scary quotes there when you look at the book cover. It's $6. It's interactive. It takes you, not only are you listening to the interviews and reading the interviews rather, but you can click to different websites, different YouTube sites. I mean, it's a wealth of information by really the leading people in the field, some of the leading people in the field. And then I weigh in at the end with about a 20, 30-page, paper on what I think this is. And I equate it to the Shroud of Turin, which we didn't have time to get into tonight, but that's okay.
Spiraloflife.com, L.A. Marzulli. That's Lynn Marzulli. Lynn, can you hang on with us while we wrap up tonight?
Certainly can. Thanks for having me on, guys.
Thank you so much for joining. I've got notes in front of me now. I'm shaking my papers. There's more than I can go over in the next week. But, Sean, it's time for us to thank all our listeners for joining us tonight for the Ghost Man and Demon Hunter Show.
Absolutely, everybody. And be sure to check out our website at www.ghostanddemon.com and log on to our forums because we really want to hear from you.
And don't forget, if you missed any part of this or any Ghost Man and Demon Hunter show, you can check it out at Planet Paranormal, Podomatic, Podcast Alley, iTunes, Mediafly, Podbean, Blueberry, Podcast Pickle, the Parrot X Radio Network, the Podfeed Community, and the Black Vault Radio Network. Thanks to OmniSound and KarmaCast for having us. Don't forget, this is our last show of the year, but we will be back in 2009. We love you all.
Yeah, absolutely. Merry Christmas, guys, and Happy New Year. Hey, don't go change your ghost hunters. We won't. We love you.
We love you, everybody. Happy New Year.